Everyone in your life is holding up a mirror to you to show you what sort of things you have to work through. Everyone shows up as a mirror in your life to show you what sort of triggers you have. I don't know if you've heard the saying, but I love the saying, your triggers reveal your trauma. So anytime you're triggered by anything, it's an opportunity for you to look at it and work through it and remove that distortion pattern by really sitting with it. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Energetically Efficient Show. I am of course your host, Kristin Rowell, and we are getting into today my Egypt recap part 2. So last week released Egypt recap part 1, and during that recap, I told you all about all the amazing parts of the experience, which were many. I gave you as much detail as I could, both between where we started our journey, where we went, all the different amazing temples that we visited, and some of the highlights of the trip, at least from my personal experience. Today, I'm going to give you some of the downsides of the trip. So I told you in the last episode that I don't really like to use the words good and bad, because really nothing is good or bad. It's just the labels that we place upon it. Everything truly just is. Those are lessons from one of my favorite spiritual teachers of all time, Eckhart Tolle. He's just an incredible, incredible spiritual person. So what I want to talk about today, though, is some of the negative things or the downsides or things that were not as pleasurable about the trip, because I feel like it's important when I share about an experience that I was on, if this is something that calls to you or that you're just interested in. I don't want to just say everything was sunshine and roses, because it's not actually reality. And I want to make sure that you understand what some of the more difficult parts of this experience were. So I'm going to get into it. I have put these in several categories for you. And so I'll just go through them. It's only 5 categories and a couple are totally related to each other. So I'll just talk about the first category, which is going on a spiritual retreat like this across the world for 2 full weeks is a lot of work. So one of the things people say to me is they're like, oh, you were in Egypt. Was it work or fun? And I just laugh because I think that question is so funny. For me, everything is the same. My work is my fun is my work. And so there really isn't a separation. However, I would say that this retreat specifically, because of how much spiritual work we were doing, how tiring some of the things were in terms of just the lack of sleep that we got and just how much we were traveling, going to and from, it truly does feel like a lot of work. So it's interesting. So I came back from Egypt. I was back in Minnesota for a week or two. I think it was only a week, perhaps, maybe 2 weeks. I can't recall. In any event, shortly after that, I went to Cabo for Thanksgiving with my family. And I realized while I was in Cabo, oh my gosh, I'm finally getting a vacation. It's not that Egypt was a vacation at all. So I don't say that really to say that that's sort of a complaint, but I just say that because I really want anyone who's interested in this kind of experience to understand that when you are doing deep frequency work, when you are working on both the rate of your own vibration and then the consciousness of the planet, it is a tremendous amount of work, but it's so much in service to the wholeness and the goodness. So I say that because some people may think that, oh my gosh, this is so much work, or, oh, I don't really want to do a lot of work. It is the most rewarding work you're ever going to do. And I mean that very sincerely, because of what you are contributing to the oneness and because of the way that you are raising your vibration for yourself. That said, it is a lot of work. So there were mornings that we only got, 3-4 hours of sleep. There were times where flights were delayed and we were in airports for hours waiting around. So there was a lot of frustration in terms of those events, but also it just made you depleted because you're also doing this deep frequency work on top of it. And as I get into the next couple of things I want to talk to you about, this will make more sense. So in addition to the fact that it was just a lot of work, because we're actually engaged in group meditations, we are working to raise our own vibration, we're working to raise the vibrational planet, all of which takes a lot of work. The second thing I would say in terms of a quote unquote downside, if there is one, is that the work is pretty exhausting. You are tired, or at least I am tired, I would say. And I was tired at periods throughout the trip. And it's interesting because sometimes it's like, oh my God, I only got 3.5 hours of sleep last night and I don't feel tired at all, because you're truly sourcing from a different energy. You're sourcing from a different frequency. When you are connected to source, you're sourcing from essentially universal energy instead of just the energy with your own physical body. So that was really interesting, because sometimes I'd be really tired. Sometimes I've had a lot of energy, but just in general, it really is exhausting. And I want to talk about that because that happened, or that came with me as I came back from the trip. So as I got back into the United States and I was integrating into this experience, and I'll talk about integration. I think I'm actually going to talk about integration now, because exhaustion and integration to me are essentially one and the same. So category 1 that I told you about was, this is just a lot of work to do an experience like this, but definitely work that is worth it. I cannot impress upon that enough. But then number 2 is, in addition, that's exhausting. The reason that it's exhausting, in addition to the fact that we're going all different hours of the evening, sometimes getting up really early, traveling on planes, trains, and automobiles, and just making our way about a completely different country, you're also exhausted because you are in deep spiritual integration. So what do I mean by that? When I first learned about integration and spiritual integration, I was like, wait, say that again? I don't really understand. So here's how I would describe it. And this is how it's been described to me, and I'll just kind of put my own spin on it because it really helped me to understand why, when you do frequency work, you're engaged in so much integration and you can feel so incredibly tired. And to really, you guys, and I can't impress this upon you enough, to not judge yourself, to not be, because I know this is something that I can get into the pattern of, is I can say, oh my gosh, I'm just so tired. I've needed more than 9 hours of sleep for several nights in a row, or I've needed a nap when I feel like I got really good sleep last night. Integration is what your physical body is doing to actually integrate all of the amazing frequency work that we did during this experience into your cells. Okay. So here's the way that I think about it. Your spirit body. So I'm going to show you this for those of you watching on video, which I recommend. So on Spotify or YouTube, you can see us on video. Your spirit body is basically 6 feet all around you. So if you look here, what I'm doing, your spirit body is at the end of your fingertips. All of this outside of my physical body, which we always think of as us, we think of the us as just the physical. We really are 99% all of this energy. And if you want more insight on what I talked about in energy in a different episode, you can listen to the episode that I did as just an introduction to energy so that you can learn more about that. But the reason I'm describing kind of this energy body is because that part is the lightest, brightest part of you. Your energy, which is something you can't visually see with your eyes, is the lightest, brightest part of you. The densest part of you, of course, is your physical body. It's this meat suit that we think of as who we are. This is who we think of as who we are. It really isn't. I mean, yes, it's who you are in one sense, but it is the smallest part of you. And so, and by smallest, I mean the least significant in terms of your percentage. So whereas your energy is 99.99% of you, your physical body is less than 0.1%. So your physical body, again, is the densest part of you. What does that mean? Well, that means when you're on an experience like this for 2 weeks where you're working out here, which my mentor refers to at the level of the field, or you might say the level of consciousness or the level of energy, when you're working at that level, your physical body is the slowest to actually integrate that work into itself. It is, I want you to think of, and this is the analogy that was provided to me, which makes a lot of sense. Think of your physical body as ice and think of your spirit body as steam. Think of how quickly when you boil hot water on the stove, the steam rises, the steam moves quickly, the steam goes like this. A block of ice, if we tried to move it that quickly, it's heavier, it's denser, it's slower, it moves through space at a much slower rate. So the same is true of your physical body. So once you go on an experience like this and you have, let's say, an experience where, like I shared about in the last episode, you know, you're moving all of that energy through you, as I showed you when I was really vibrating during a couple different of our meditations together. Your physical body has to integrate that, and it doesn't happen instantly. We are too slow in our vibration. We are too dense in our form to make that happen snap quick. The higher and higher and higher you get in your resonance, meaning if we were a different sort of beingness, if we weren't human, if we were a higher level being, you could, at higher level rates of being, integrate that work just like the snap of a finger. But for those of us who are human, and depending on the rate of your vibration, it can take us hours, days, months, or weeks to integrate that deep, deep work, depending on what the issue is for you. So in terms of this exhaustion/integration part that I would talk about, I found myself when I came home from Egypt feeling frustrated that I had to sleep so much. I thought, here I was just on this experience for 2 weeks. Yes, I was corresponding with clients while I was gone, but you know, you're plucked out of your business for a couple of weeks. And I thought, I have so much to get back to and so much work to do. I can't afford to be sleeping all the time, right? And it's exactly what you have to do in order to integrate all of the work that you do on frequency level. And I would say at least that's true for me. Now, for some people, integration may happen for them in a different way. And they may need to, I don't know, exercise more or move their body more or be in a ton more stillness. Now, those are all things that are good for you. I tend to exercise a lot already. I do work on being more and more in stillness all of the time. But one of the ways my body, because I will say this about myself, I feel grateful. It's probably part of the reason that the name Energetically Efficient came to me in a meditation in 2018, is I am very efficient at how I integrate. So my higher self is like, oh God, she's going to stay in her mind. She's going to keep thinking. She's not going to integrate this quickly. We've just got to knock her out and make her tired and let her receive all of this amazing work on frequency level. So that's what my higher self does for my small, dense human body, is it says we just have to make her tired so that she can integrate the work. So I told you number one was just in general, this retreat was a lot of work. I told you number two is that this was exhausting, and that includes this piece of integration that we had to do both during the retreat and coming back from the retreat. And now I want to go into what I'd say are categories 3 and 4. And 4, you guys, is a real interesting one. I can't wait to get to 4. First, I'm going to tell you about 3, but before I even get to 3, I do want to say a little bit more about this integration, because as I was just saying that, I remembered I want to give you guys a tool for what I used throughout the course of the retreat in order to integrate. And in fact, I have done that a fair amount since I came back here to Nashville. And that is a practice that I have been doing regularly since 2021, and it's called NSA. Some people refer to it as network. Some people refer to it as network spinal analysis, but NSA stands for network spinal analysis. And what it is, the way you can think about it most easily, is that it is chiropractic care where they don't really touch you. So you may be thinking, wait, what? I thought chiropractic care was, cracking things in the spine, moving your body, contorting you in different positions so that you unwound. That's true. And there's this other form of chiropractic care called network spinal analysis that I would say for me personally, and I know a lot of other people that do this frequency work that would say the same, is the fastest way to integrate that spiritual work through the physical body. Because what you're doing is you're taking all of that energy and you're integrating it through your central nervous system. And if there's 2 things that dictate the way your entire reality works, it's the state of your vibration and the state of your central nervous system. Those are the 2 things that literally dictate your entire reality. Again, the rate of your vibration and the state of your central nervous system. So if you can do this deep frequency work that really changes your vibration and increases it to a way that makes your life so much better on all levels, and then you can do this physical work through NSA to bring all of that spiritual work into the physical body and integrate it through your central nervous system, you are a completely different person and you're so much higher in vibration and your life just flows with so much ease. So I actually did network spinal analysis. Lucky for all of us on the retreat, the leader of the retreat, Karen, brought her NSA practitioner, or flew in her NSA practitioner, who was with us on this experience from San Francisco. So it's this gifted woman. Her name is Dr. Aiden Kinsella, and she owns a company called Verve Wellness Studio, where she provides NSA to local people in San Francisco, but then she also joins us on these retreats. So I've received the benefit of Aiden's work. I began receiving it in 2021, and every time I do one of these spiritual retreats or experiences, I get NSA frequently throughout the course of the retreat, and I'm happy to say in Egypt, I did NSA almost every single day. I've done it since I've come back here. My body is so different. My energy is so different. My NSA practitioner here in Nashville already commented on how expansive I've become since this experience, and she can feel it when she is working with my energy body. And so that's just so exciting. So on this topic, just to kind of close out this topic of integration, what I would say is if the journey of getting more into frequency work is interesting to you, you might also consider exploring, or at least consider finding an NSA practitioner in your area. Again, NSA stands for Network Spinal Analysis. And one of the things when I talk about NSA with clients, because I've introduced a lot of clients to this practice, this kind of work, I tell them, here's your first assignment. Go and watch, and maybe you guys have seen this, maybe you haven't, but the way that I first heard about it was I was traveling in Australia during the pandemic. So this was in March, April of 2020. And during that experience, it was right around the time that Netflix had come out with Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop Lab series. So you may have heard of that. It either came out in 2019 or 2020. I'm not exactly sure of the date, but it's called the Goop Lab series. And in this series, episode number 5 is called The Energy Experience, and it's all about NSA. So Gwyneth Paltrow was doing NSA before it was cool. She's been doing this for many, many, many years, maybe 20 at this point. I don't know. But she brought in her NSA practitioner and another, so it was this particular chiropractor and then a medical doctor. And they were talking about how, essentially the way I think of it is how Western and Eastern medicine medicine can come together in order to provide truly root cause healing for individuals that would, not involve having to take any pharmaceutical medications or anything, because in a completely different episode, I could talk about the fact that truly at the root cause of nearly every single thing that people suffer from is an energetic distortion. It's energy. Really, we could solve everything at the level of energy. We just haven't been taught how. So hopefully you're learning something about how during this episode, and this is curious and interesting to you. So final thing I'll say about integration is, if you watch episode 5 of the energy experience, and then that kind of practice is interesting to you, and you think, central nervous system healing sounds interesting to me, it may be something that I could try, then just go on Google and look for a network spinal analysis chiropractor in your area. And you may have to do some digging. I know there are some network spinal analysis websites that provide directories for where you could find those, at least in the United States. But you also may just want to ask any chiropractor if they know of anyone in the network spinal world who does that kind of work. So I will happily put the information for my network spinal person in Nashville. Her name is Dr. Elaine Thornton. Her clinic is called Vitality Empowers. I will put her information here along with other practitioners that I have been treated by around the country. So I will add them here. Okay. So we talked about a lot of work. We talked about exhausting/integration. And the last 2 topics that I want to talk about, I told you to talk about topics 3 and 4. So topic 3 is also interesting, as is 4. But 3 is, and this is the hardest part about frequency work, you guys, I'm just going to tell you, for me anyways, set aside the exhaustion, I can deal with that. Set aside the difficulty in integration, I can deal with that. Set aside doing a lot of work. So what? I do a lot of work all the time. I love work. Really, what's tough about frequency work is, because it works at the level of the field to bring up in you your distortion patterns that are, I'll refer to them as, pattern is really the word, but I'll use habits or thoughts or ways of being or things that have kept you stuck that, by the way, in large part, you probably are completely unaware of. You didn't even realize that you had distortions around these issues. You didn't realize, for example, that you might have had some religious distortions that are holding you back. You didn't realize that you had some kind of rule sets around, hello, this is yours truly, perfectionism, achieving, having to do things a certain way, and that you were really holding yourself back from being in your most creative, highest vibrational state because of some of these distortions. Those tend to come up and out before you can release them. So what that means is, when you're going through a period of releasing intense distortion patterns, or when you have distortion patterns coming up, you may feel, this is all what was happening to me in Egypt, completely irritated, annoyed, agitated, angry. I don't want to be around anyone. This person's annoying. I don't like this thing they're doing. And this has nothing to do, by the way, with the people around me. People in your life show up as a mirror to you to highlight for you what the distortion patterns are that you're ready to release. So a sign of the fact that you have gotten rid of distortion patterns around someone, let's just use someone in your family, for example, is you can hold in complete neutrality around them. There's nothing that they do that triggers you. There's nothing that they do that you find annoying. You're just like, oh, they're just doing their thing. They're in their way of being. It's different than mine, but okay, that's just who they are. None of it rattles you. Have you ever heard the saying, if you think you're evolved, go spend a weekend with your family? That's because for most people, no one triggers them like their family. Well, I wasn't in this retreat in Egypt with anyone in my family, so I'm not talking about anyone in my family. I'm talking about just the people around me, just the power of the group, just random people I don't know at a restaurant, people working at the airport. It didn't matter. I cannot even tell you the number of times where I was feeling so much agitation come up in my body that I was like, oh, I just need to be alone. I just need to listen to meditation. I need to meditate. I need to be in quiet time. I need to sit on the bus and not talk to anyone. I need to put on an eye mask. I need to sleep. I need to just go in my room and be by myself. All of those things kept coming up for me constantly, on top of all of the amazing experiences I was having, going on these temples, riding on the bus with friends, laughing about funny jokes. It's all of it. So I don't want you to think that you go on an experience like this and all of a sudden it's horrible and you're just pissed off the entire time. That's not what I'm sharing at all. So please don't misunderstand me. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because some people may think once their distortion patterns start to come out, oh, this isn't working, or this isn't for me, or there's something wrong, or I shouldn't be doing this, or this is clearly I don't know, making me worse in some way, or this isn't actually elevating my frequency. It's actually causing me to be negative. But the reality is what's happening for you is you're releasing long held distortion patterns that you're finally getting rid of, and they need to come up and out before they go away. So think about when you're sick. Think about when you have a cough. Think about when you have a cold. The cold doesn't just work through your body and leave. It has to come out in the form of mucus, in the form of coughing. You're actually working to get it out. And so the period of getting all of that pathogen out of your body, those pathogens rather, out of your body, is you feel like garbage. I mean, for anyone who experienced having COVID back at the time, you would know that if you were in a tremendous amount of physical pain, I know I was when I went through it, it wasn't fun, but it was my body getting stronger and fighting it off to know that I would have a super strong immune system, which I have. And I've, of course, never had that condition again. So that's what I mean when I say distortion patterns coming out. It's almost like when you feel sick and you have all this gunk coming up, this is spiritually, you're getting rid of long held distortion patterns that have held you back. And so when they come up, you feel annoyed, agitated, frustrated. At least that's the way I experience. For some people, they might experience tremendous feelings of insecurity. They might experience feelings of a lot of grief. They might experience feelings of fear. There's all sorts of different things that could come up. I will say, and I noticed this coming up for me sometime in the last year as I was working through certain patterns, is I had a certain couple of patterns coming up for me around, oh, and this actually happened at the beginning of the retreat because I asked a question about this. Yes, I want to bring this up for you guys. There was something coming up for me around scarcity, which was very interesting because I don't tend to have a lot of scarcity patterns, but there was one that came up for me for sure during this experience. So the scarcity pattern that came up for me during this experience was actually happening from Cairo to Aswan when the retreat began. And we were receiving some messages in our Telegram group channel from our leader of this retreat, who was saying one of the things that we're going to notice once we get to Egypt and just pay attention to what comes up for us, how we feel, is how much polarity there is in the country. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but in Egypt, this is another thing that was very difficult. It's very oppressive against women. So some of the distortion patterns that were coming up for me was feeling confined, feeling oppressed, feeling like I couldn't do anything without a man. I was so angry about it, because I felt like I just was stuck and I couldn't be independent. And so I had to work through a lot of those distortion patterns during the trip. But another thing that came up for me on the scarcity topic was I got on a plane from Cairo to Aswan, and I remember thinking at the time, I know that Karen mentioned there might be some polarity, but I haven't really seen any of that. I haven't noticed it anyways. I haven't noticed it. Maybe it'll be once I get more deep into Egypt, once we get to Aswan. Well, then I get on the flight from Cairo to Aswan, and how it presented to me, how this polarity, the scarcity rather, distortion came up for me is I all of a sudden started to notice around me, there was this large Asian family, and they were of all different ages, but they literally were sitting in the row next to me, in the row in front of me, in the row behind me. They were surrounding me, and they had extreme wealth. And I was laughing, thinking about, I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, the Crazy Rich Asian movie. I was thinking about that at the time and thinking about, oh my gosh, it was all ages. It was like young kids, older kids, whatever. And it was shoes and multiple handbags and labels everywhere and everything. And the first thing I noticed was that I noticed it because I thought, I wonder why I'm so tuned in to all of these labels around me. Big deal. Like, so what? And then what I noticed shortly thereafter is I noticed myself start to compare myself to these individuals who clearly had all these labels and all of this, material wealth. And I noticed myself comparing, and I thought, well, that's really weird. And I felt sort of annoyed by it. And so this is just an example of how a distortion pattern may come up that then allows you to move through it and release it. And I was able to work with it over the next couple of days and release that pattern to the point that now when I even tell you the story, I'm like, what version of me even cared about what labels those people had on the plane? That doesn't even seem like anything that I would even notice at this point. So I just thought that was really interesting as just an example. And it can happen that quickly and that easily because, again, everyone in your life is holding up a mirror to you to show you what sort of things you have to work through. So everyone shows up as a mirror in your life to show you what sort of triggers you have. I don't know if you've heard the saying, but I love the saying, your triggers reveal your trauma. So anytime you're triggered by anything, it's an opportunity for you to look at it and work through it and remove that distortion pattern by really sitting with it. And the biggest thing that I do, because this is what I've had to work through over the course of many years of learning this, is I have to sit with whatever the emotion is that's making me have the trigger. So maybe if it's annoyance or frustration, and underneath that is anger, or underneath that is fear, or underneath that is sadness, whatever it is, I have to actually let myself have the feelings, move through them as a part of my process for releasing the distortion pattern. So I did this in the last Egypt recap, but I think because of the fact that my mentor has so many good resources for this, I'm going to put her website again, Spherical Luminosity, underneath this particular video, so that if that's interesting to you, you can look at a lot of her work. She has paid work. She has a lot of free resources. She releases a podcast every week where she provides free work. So you can check that out, and I will make sure that I leave that for you. So that is what I would say about distortion patterns coming up. I gave you the example, of course, of the scarcity, but then also just the oppression against women. That was one of the most difficult things about Egypt. You know, when you go, in this kind of funny story, you guys, when you go through airports in Egypt, they really have to not strip search you, but what is it called? They have to pat you down. Okay, so they have a separate line for women and they have a separate line for men. And in the line for women, it's women patting down the women, and the line for men, it's men patting down the men. So we're walking through one of the airports at one point with our big group. And that day, I was in a travel outfit. So I was wearing a sweatshirt and sweats. And the woman starts patting me down very aggressively, and she gets to here and she's like, "What is that?" And kind of yelling at me. So when you're in another country, you just sort of have to play along with what their system is. And I was like, and I lifted up my sweatshirt and I showed her and I said, "It's my rib. Like, those are my ribs." But it's either that they have never patted down someone who is fit, or they thought it was a bulletproof vest, or they thought I was wearing some. I don't really know what they thought, but I thought it was so funny that I had to lift up my shirt and literally show her that it was just part of my body. It was my ribs. So I thought that was pretty funny. But okay, I promised you I'd get to number 4, and I want to talk about number 4 because number 4 is so gross, and I'm going to show you a photo in just a moment so that you can see what I'm talking about. So before I tell you what it is, I want to preface it with how it happened. And that is, remember I told you in the last episode, if you listen to that, my journey started from Nashville, driving to Minneapolis, flying to Paris, flying to Cairo, flying to Aswan. And then from Aswan, we made our way up through Luxor. And then we made our way up back to Cairo, flew to Sharm el-Sheikh, drove on a bus to St. Catherine Monastery by Mount Sinai, drove back to Sharm el-Sheikh and flew back to Cairo. And then I flew back through Paris and back to Minneapolis. I'm tired just saying it. When we went to Mount Sinai, so again, we flew to Sharm el-Sheikh and then we took a bus and went to Mount Sinai. And when we got to Mount Sinai, we got to this hotel that was at the base of Mount Sinai. It was near St. Catherine's Monastery, and there aren't a number of lodging options available there. And the other problem is there aren't a lot of lodging options available for a group of like 50 people, okay? Because you really take over an entire hotel. So our group did the best in finding a spot that would accommodate all of us. But when we got there, we all thought, okay, this place doesn't feel that great. The land felt amazing, being outside on the land and being in that part of the earth. I thought that was quite beautiful. But when we all checked into our rooms, we were like, ew. I mean, we were staying in nicer hotels throughout the whole experience. This hotel was not nice. So again, just highlighting the polarity of the trip. We were in a 5-star hotel. Now we're in like less than a 1-star. It was really gross. Some of the people were complaining that the rooms didn't even seem clean. I mean, it was not nice. And I just thought, whatever, I've been camping. I mean, we have a family cabin that's up in the middle of the woods that has an outhouse, like it doesn't even have running water. I'll be fine. It doesn't matter. I'm just having to sleep here for 2 nights. Who cares? It's not a big deal. Well, I probably should have thought this might be a big deal, because what happened was, and I did not realize this, you guys, until a couple days later, once I landed back in Minnesota, at that hotel, several of us, including yours truly, got bed bugs. Okay. I've never had bed bugs. I've never known anyone who had bed bugs, but I was freaking out. So here's a photo of the bed bugs all across my face. You can see how bad they got. It's disgusting because they were making little bites. Obviously, you can see here now in my skin, I have completely healed. Thank goodness. But this was one of the most disgusting things that I've experienced. And here's where I got lucky. So something in my intuition, it was also cold there. We were at the base of a mountain. That was probably the one time throughout all of Egypt we were cold. So I actually slept in, that Viore brand I had with me that I was traveling in that day, the Viore jogger pants and a long sleeve Viore top, which if you know that brand, it's a little bit of a thicker fabric. okay, which I don't think those bugs could penetrate, thank God, because I slept with that on. And I slept with socks on, so I didn't have gloves. Of course, so the only thing that was exposed were my hands and my face, literally, because I was sleeping on the pillow and turning in my face. And I tend to sleep on this side of my face. And that was the side that got bed bugs, which is just literally so disgusting. I can hardly stand it. Okay. So I didn't have any on my back. I didn't have any on my body. I didn't have any on my legs. I did get a few on my ankles because I must have had exposed skin between my socks and the bottom of those jogger pants. But I feel so grateful that I was smart enough to sleep in that outfit. And keep in mind, the first night we slept there, I only slept from like 11 p.m., not even, it might have been midnight, until 2 a.m. when we had to get up and hike Mount Sinai. So I wasn't in the bed for that long. And then, of course, we hiked for hours and hours. But then I slept in that bed again that night before we left at like 5 or 6 a.m. the next morning. So even though it was short nights of sleep, clearly I got bed bugs and I brought them back with me, which also is completely disgusting. So the way I figured this out, because I just want to tell you, if you ever wonder about bed bugs, I have never, you guys, in my entire life, when I've slept in a hotel, pulled back the sheets to look to see if the sheets look clean. I've just never even thought to do that. But that is something I would do from now on, because maybe I would have seen some activity on the bed. I have no idea. But what happened was when I landed, it was actually when I got to the airport in Cairo before I was about to start the long journey home. I was checking in and getting onto my flight in Cairo at like 2 a.m. We had a really weird departure time. It was 1 or 2 a.m. to fly to Paris to then fly back to Minnesota. And what I noticed is the first thing I saw is I had these 2 little bites. I'm just going to show you my hand. You can't see them now, but I had 2 bites at the base of my hand. And I remember thinking about my hand, I wonder if I got a bite there. I don't know how that happened, but they were really, really itching. And I even told my friend who I was traveling with, I said, oh, it's so funny. When my left palm itches, it tends to mean that money is coming in for me. And if you Google this, that's actually a real thing. When your right hand itches, it tends to mean you're losing money. When your left hand itches, it tends to mean you're getting money. So I told her, I said, I'm just itching these spots so bad that I'm just going to manifest that it means a bunch of money is coming in for some reason. And so we kind of laughed about it. Well, by the time I landed in Minnesota, I happened to notice that I had these zigzag marks on my hand, basically going up my thumb and starting to go up my pointer finger and then kind of like on my hand. And I thought, okay, that's weird. And just intuitively, as I was landing, I start Googling skin infections you can get well in Egypt, because I thought something's happening. Like this, my intuition said something is very wrong. And so the first thing that came up was something called scabies. And I thought, oh my God, this is disgusting. This is like having lice all over your body. Okay. And I had lice when I was a little girl. My sisters and I did, from when I don't remember if we were on a family reunion or something, but my parents and I still laugh about the story that we all got lice from some dingy hotel in a random small town in Minnesota. So I thought, if I have scabies, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Oh my God. I get off the plane, and within 2 hours of landing, getting through customs, everything else, I am standing in a CVS pharmacy in Minnesota at a Target, talking to a woman saying, oh my God, I think I have scabies. You have to help me. And so she was so sweet and gave me a prescription for this cream that you basically put on your entire body. And I asked her also if I could have ivermectin, because I knew that that was good for parasites, and I'd just been in Egypt and all that. So I did both things. So I knew whatever I had, I was about to kill it. So I have to go to a hotel room, because at this point, I think it's scabies. I don't realize it's bed bugs. So at this point, I can't even go pick up my dogs, which are staying with friends, because if I do have scabies, I could give them to dogs. They could give them back to me. You can't do that. You can't be around animals. So I go straight from the CVS, pick up my prescription at a Target, buy random sweats and a sweatshirt at Target, go check myself into a hotel in Minneapolis, take off all my clothes, put them in a plastic bag outside of my room, because I'm going to literally burn them. And then I go in the shower at the hotel, and I proceed to put this cream from basically right under my eyes down every single inch of my body. And then I have to basically lay on the bed and fall asleep, which thankfully the jet lag was setting in by this point. So I did sleep, and you have to rinse that cream off 8 hours later, 8 to 14 hours later. I was so scared of having any sort of bugs on me, you guys. I did it a second time. So I was just like, I'm killing whatever this is. And by that point, I noticed that all of these little bumps that I'd gotten on my face, which I was starting to think were scabies, I was noticing that there weren't any more. Because for a while, it was like another one, then another one, then another one. And I thought, oh my God, this is so disgusting. Are they like burrowing under my skin? Are they creating a family in there? I was so grossed out. I couldn't even handle it. And so I fortunately had everything contained in my suitcase. I thought, here's the benefit of all of this. I didn't bring all of this back to my home in Nashville. I didn't go to my sister's and infect her home. I didn't go, granted, yes, I went to a hotel, but I literally, you guys, I took off my clothes immediately, put them in a plastic bag, sealed, and then threw all that stuff away. And I rinsed off as quickly as I could. So I didn't transfer this to anyone else. Thank God. I'm a little worried about being in Delta 1 on the way home, realizing that I had this on my body, but the reality is they were on my body, and so it wasn't scabies. Thankfully, I figured out within the next day or two, based on some messages that my group and I were having from this retreat, that actually it was bed bugs, because other people had them too. And then I started to Google that more, and I realized that this is why I was telling you about they were biting in a zigzag. Bed bugs tend to bite in a zigzag pattern. So it never even dawned on me to Google bed bugs, because I've never had them. I didn't know what the symptoms were. I didn't know what they looked like. I didn't realize you'd get all these bites. I don't know what I thought bed bugs were, but I didn't realize that I'd have all these bites. So that is what I have to share with you about my bed bugs. And I realized, because we literally create the reality that we need for ourselves, I realize now that I think what I did is I called in this circumstance of bed bugs so that when I got back from Egypt, I was forced, as hard as it was for me, because I was in major releasing of my distortion patterns, I was forced to be alone for several days. So I went to that one hotel room, finally got myself healed with all the creams, so I knew I wasn't infectious anymore. The next day went and picked up my dogs, and I checked into a different hotel where they allow dogs, so that I stayed there for the rest of that week and worked. And I was able to heal my skin. I was able to see my esthetician in the Twin Cities, who was able to do some laser on my face and get it start healing quickly. I used some really good creams and cleaners and everything else. And I obviously heal my body really well, and I take care of myself, and I eat well. So all of those things were good. But I wanted to tell you that because when you travel in another country and when you are staying at a variety of hotels, you just never know what could happen. Now, I was telling this story to a friend in the Twin Cities after I got home, and she was telling me about someone that she knows who she works with who lives in a totally different state. I'm just noticing myself itching now. I swear to God, every time I tell this story, I get itchy, which is so funny. I don't have bed bugs right now, you guys, I swear. But in any event, I was telling my friend this story, and she said that she knows of someone she works with, again, in a different state, I think it was California, that someone in her, she must live in an apartment building, and someone in a neighboring apartment had bed bugs, and they, this is so sick, I can't even believe this is real, but they somehow crawled through the wall and infected her apartment because he had bed bugs in a neighboring apartment. So apparently bed bugs are kind of a thing, and I had no idea. And I'm just happy that I got rid of them. I'm glad that I overtreated them thinking they were scabies. And I am happy to report that I really don't think I'm ever going to have bed bugs again. Let's at least hope not, because now I will be much more discerning anytime I'm at a hotel room, anytime I'm about to get into a bed that is not mine, and be looking at the sheets, be really checking everything. You just never know. I've heard of people getting bed bugs at really nice hotels too. So this is something that I'm going to be checking very carefully from here on out. Okay, so just by way of a quick recap, because I know I shared a lot with you about the sort of more difficult parts of this experience. Number one was these kinds of experiences of spiritual retreats, as rewarding and amazing and powerful as they are a lot of work. Like I said, it's good work. I would do it all over again in a heartbeat, and I'll do another one of these again in the future, of course. Number two, they're exhausting, and that's, I'd call number two exhaustion/integration, because integration, at least for me, can make me so tired, and it just reveals that I have to nap a lot. There are other people, and I know I mentioned a little bit about the fact that people may integrate differently. Some people have very difficult time sleeping. They actually can't sleep while they're integrating, and that would really be difficult to be, exhausted and then also not able to sleep. So that's not ideal, but everyone integrates differently. And then number three, of course, you have all of these amazing distortion patterns coming up, showing you what all of your traumas are, what all of your drama is, what all of your things are that you're ready to release and let go of to become a higher vibrational version of yourself. So that was not awesome. And then of course, four, I was one of the lucky ones, and it was not everyone, but I was one of the lucky ones who called in bed bugs, got bed bugs while we were likely at that hotel in Mount Sinai, because that's the one that was just so dingy, and I'd be surprised if it was at anywhere else where we stayed. Okay, so hopefully that has given you some things to think about, get curious about. The bed bugs was more just sharing with you for fun and to be funny, because I'm going to share a few photos actually here, because I just want you to see what I was dealing with. It was not good at all. One of these photos is after I even put a bunch of makeup on it, but you could still see there were a number of things on my face. And then I also, of course, had those bites on my hand. I am so lucky that I slept with that many clothes that night in the hotel room, both nights, so that they didn't get anywhere else on my body. So that was really nice. Okay, I will be back. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Energetically Efficient Show, or watching it for those of you who are watching us on Spotify or on YouTube. I just love having you here as a part of my community. Now that we've done 2 Egypt recaps, I'm going to come back with another metabolic health episode for you next week, and we will round out 2025 with that. I cannot wait to see you all in 2026. I should just give a quick plug for this amazing event that I'm hosting on January 28th of 2026. It's called Master Your Energy, and we will put a link below this episode so that you can check all of that out. I cannot tell you guys enough how important 2026 is going to be in terms of energy. So if you want to join us on that date, check out the link below. Thanks so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Energetically Efficient Show. Right, Ketchy? Do you want to say bye too? Honey? There, she wants to say bye too. Okay, thank you guys so much. Bye. Bye.